Hello, today's conversation is for every business owner who cares deeply about their team and wants to lead well, but wonders, is being good leader still enough? My guest today is David Grossman. He is the founder and CEO of the Grossman Group and one of the country's leading experts on leadership and change communication. His newest research-based book, The Heart Work of Modern Leadership, explores what separates good leaders from exceptional ones. David, welcome to the Deliberate Leaders Podcast. I'm so happy to have you today.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be joining you today, Allison.
My pleasure. I love to kick these off with a quick, deliberate conversation. So, what would be your number one leadership tip for our listeners today?
So, my number one tip is to be intentional. So, when I have time, I love to cook.
Mhm.
Allison, I don't know about you. I'm a clean as you go kind of cook.
Oh,
Okay. All right. So we would cook beautifully together. I was cooking with a friend recently. Let's
okay.
just say she is not a clean as you go kind of cook. So I thought to myself, David, you always talk with leaders about flexing your style. So
Mhm.
flex your style. And I have to tell you, I did not care for it one bit. There were ingredients all over my kitchen. There were dirty dishes in the sink. We sat down to eat. The food did not taste as good. That Pinot Noir was not as lovely. And I realized communication and is a lot like cooking. Why is it we always have time to clean up a mess, but we don't have time to be planful and purposeful? And what I know today is exceptional leaders are super planful about how they show up for their people.
Yeah. That's a great tip. Intentional, I feel, is very equal to deliberate. And as you know, deliberate, is a very, that's my heart. I try to be deliberate
Mhm.
about everything. I'm curious, do you think over the past maybe I don't know, since 2020 or the last 5 or 6 years, has that changed, or do you feel like this is still the thing that leaders still need to improve upon?
I think it's still the thing. I think what's changed is what do we need to be more deliberate or intentional about? Because I think what's important as we think about the employee experience today and what employees need is very different than what we've seen in the past.
Very true. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I understand that your book is built on research of over 2,000 employees, and I just want to figure out what were your findings and why should every business owner pay attention?
So what we found, so we went to the Harris poll. They helped us with a survey, employed Americans, more than 2,000. And what we found out was employees rated their leaders exceptional, good, outdated. 54% of leaders today are good. Not bad, not exceptional, but good. And most business owners might think, wow, that's great. But when we dug deeper, here's what we found. Because we also asked, what is it like? What does it feel like to work for one of these good leaders? Here's what employees told us. Only 16% feel like what's important to them is valued. Only 19% feel heard, and only 16% feel like they're reaching their potential. So good leaders are a challenge, a danger potentially, an invisible threat inside organizations today. They are both the problem and, of course, they are the solution as we think about what exceptional leadership looks like today.
Okay, so the top was they feel valued. They feel their values are being met or valued.
So they feel valued. So here's one distinction
Valued. Okay.
yes, I'd love to make here. So
Okay.
there are two things that good leaders do well. One is they help their employees understand that they're contributing. They
Okay.
say thank you, they provide appreciation. And then the second is that they do well is they provide support. So direction, make sure employees have the resources they need. So the feel like my What's important to me is being valued. The distinction here is, and it's subtle. So good leaders value the work. Employees are saying, value me, the worker.
Mhm.
That's the big difference here in one of the first big blind spots when it comes to exceptional leadership today.
Okay. I think the one that made me gasp a little bit when you were just sharing that data was that they didn't feel like they were being tapped into for their potential.
Yes.
And I'm a potential person. Like anything's possible. Like you say, you want to
Yeah.
figure out how to do it. Um, in your research, what was the biggest gap that you found surprising?
Yes. So good leaders might say, here's our strategy and here's why we're going there. So they cover the what and the why, or well,
Okay.
more likely the why than the what. Exceptional leaders cover both the why and the what, and
Okay.
then the who, the you. So they connect strategy
Mhm.
to how you are going to grow as an individual through the strategy that we're implementing together or the goal. That's how I know I have a future. That's how I know there's a path for me. So that's a key distinction and an unlock for leaders today.
Do you think that leaders, when they're developing their strategies, have that in mind?
Not at all.
Okay.
You know, not in any way, shape, or form. I think good leaders today were trained for stable times.
Yeah.
And in many cases, of course, we're not in stable times today. We're in very uncertain times. And they're good at the overall strategy development, but connecting that strategy to the people on their team, to every individual individually, making it relevant to them and helping them know that they have a path. That's not something that's happening as much as it should be today.
Yeah. What I love about my audience is it is a combination of the ownership track as well as leaders who are inside of organizations. And so,
Mhm.
if you could share from your research one thing, what are employees asking in their heads, but they're not asking out loud, and it is impacting how they feel about what they're doing?
Yeah, so there's some key questions today, especially so as we think about the emotional weight that folks are bringing into the workplace today, as we think about all of this uncertainty, the questions are around, do I still belong? Will I be okay? Is there a future here for me? And I think the most important is my discretionary effort worth it? What we want from our folks around innovation and stretch assignment and additional sort of productivity and smart. So those are some of the questions that they're asking and wondering about. And our ability as leaders to answer those questions will keep people focused on helping us get to where we want to go and helping them continue to grow and feel like they are safe and secure in the organization.
Okay, so I'm trying to tie those two back together. So what do business owners need to do? So I love the fact that you think that, or the research shows that these are the questions that they have. So
Yep.
now they know that, or at
Yep.
least I'm being shown that that is the thing. As a business owner, like what do I need to do?
Yeah. So let's talk about a couple of actions.
Okay.
So one is we need to talk to our people and understand what they want from their job.
Mhm.
So I'm a big Broadway fan, and what I know about musicals is early on in every show, the hero steps forward and they sing what is often called an I want song.
Okay.
And you learn everything you need to know about them, their hopes and dreams, and who they are and their values through that I Want song. So Ariel, for example, wants to be part of our world, or Elphaba wants to be seen for who she really is. Hamilton, he wants to not miss his shot. So every employee has their own I Want song. Every employee has a story. So, for us as leaders, do we know what that story is for everyone on our team? And I know we have the capability to do it because if you think back to the pandemic, for example, after we all knew the pandemic was real, what did leaders do? They picked up the phone. They called their folks and they said, How are you doing? Are you safe? How are you staying safe? What's your situation? They shared information. They were very human. They figured out like what was everyone's story then. So I know we can do it. So let's find out what's important to each of our folks. And then the other piece that's important then is to be able to share gratitude with them that connects to who they are. So that's one action that closes the first gap that we talked about. The second around feeling heard. So it's so interesting when I talk with leaders, when they hear employees aren't feeling heard, they first think, I need to listen better. But that's the wrong sort of reflection here because you can't hear what people won't say. And
True.
people won't say things when they don't feel safe.
Mhm.
So the action here around helping people feel heard is in many cases to take off your own armor as a leader, to demonstrate vulnerability, the right kind of appropriate, healthy vulnerability, so your folks feel safe to be able to speak up, so that you can talk about sort of what are they carrying these days, so you can share context with them about what's happening. So that's an action for the second gap. And then the third around this whole idea of not reaching my potential is what we already talked about here. The action is to connect an individual's sort of growth plan around the overall strategy. That's the other key action here.
There's uh, a lot of components in that. So let's give maybe like what's the first action someone could do if they feel all of that is very overwhelming? Let's say you have a very large team and that feels like a big task to pull.
Mhm. So I think if there's only one thing leaders are going to do beyond being more purposeful or deliberate or intentional, my thought is it's around gratitude. So gratitude was the number one differentiator of exceptional leaders. And there are six overall, but that is the number one differentiator by far. And why gratitude is so important is because, especially in times of uncertainty, it acts like a short circuit to the survival brain. Those times when we get overwhelmed and our sort of primitive brain kicks in, gratitude helps us be able to say to folks, I see you, you're appreciated, and you're safe. And that allows the thinking brain to kick in. It allows folks to get back to those higher level kinds of things. Now, good leaders will say, great job. Exceptional leaders will name the behavior, they'll name the impact, and they'll make it personal. That's what's key about gratitude is you have to make it personal. It can't be general. So that is one thing leaders can do today. And my wish or thought is, can you work up to maybe 5 acts of gratitude a day? Maybe just start with one. As of course we're integrating new habits, we always want to start small and be successful. So even just one. But what's key is name the behavior, name the impact, make it personal to that person.
We do an exercise in a lot of our leadership when we're developing gratitude as a muscle, because sometimes it feels awkward to recognize someone else for something that they've done. Is
Yeah.
who do you want to recognize and why? Let them know, tell them, and the only thing the other person needs to do is say thank you. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Love that. I think the other piece of this too is, can we get a sense of how folks want to be appreciated?
Yeah.
Some want it in private, some want it in public. So we can be
Complete.
super sensitive to what that looks like so it can be most meaningful for that team member.
Yeah, I agree. Those are key things to keep in mind. Inside your book, you've identified 6 differentiators of exceptional leaders. Can you walk us through each of them and then tell us your number one if we haven't already covered that in this conversation so
Yeah.
far?
So, number one is lead with gratitude.
I love
The
that.
second is listen and empathize. The third is around fostering an inclusive culture, which really means having a we're all in this together kind of attitude and approach. So interestingly, there are three heart focused. Those are the three heart focused. Then the three head focused are around communicating with context, which is also about calibration,
Mhm.
making sure that we're thinking about our audience and how we're communicating meets their needs. Connecting strategy to employee growth. We've been talking about that already. And then lastly, empowering teams to meet this very moment. So those are the six.
Love all of those. Is there one that's the most important? I mean, would it go back to the gratitude one, or would you pick a second one since we have covered that? Like, is there a second most important one?
Yes. And so my sense is listening and empathizing, really getting a sense of and understanding our folks today and where they're coming from, doing much more listening than talking. I see a lot of leaders that I work with, there's too much telling that's happening, not enough listening. And if we're not listening, that means we're not gathering information, we're not being curious, we're not getting facts and data and a sort of a gut feel of what's most important here that we then can use to make smarter decisions. So for me, it's absolutely around listening and empathizing that would be next up.
I think a lot of leaders get to where they are by working really hard. And then I'm just going to balance that with there's a lot of business owners out there who found a trade or something that they love to do and then found themselves with a team that they have to
Hmm.
lead. And then some business schools go through leadership and how to be an exceptional leader, but I'd say that's still pretty soft overall, generally speaking. That's a broad statement, but I don't
Hmm.
think it's emphasized enough, certainly in any technical trade and or business school. Um, what do you think anyone listening to this might feel a misunderstanding about what it means to have hard skills? Because we're saying leadership skills, hard skills. What is the difference?
Yeah. So I think folks might think that these skills that I'm talking about are soft. So I'd love to talk about that for a moment. So, one of the sort of things that's relentlessly advancing in our world today, of course, is AI. And there is so much that AI can do. And there's also so much that AI can't do. And as AI becomes more commoditized, what we're going to find is these human skills are going to become even more important because AI can't think about empathy or emotional intelligence. It can't provide that balance. So my wish here too is I would love to stop calling these skills soft skills. Like these are the hard skills today. They are
They're the
A,
hardest skills to implement. Yes, currently.
yes, yes, they're hard to learn, I think, and
Mhm.
they're also hard to implement. So I'd love for us, could we call them fundamental skills or essential skills or human skills? But they are no longer soft today. And I think about, those leaders that master AI are going to replace leaders that don't master AI. At the same time, those leaders that are human are going to be replacing leaders that aren't human. That is going to become the differentiator and the opportunity for leaders and leadership are some of these heart-focused skills. And let me say just one more thing, because I want to make sure I'm doing a good job communicating that I think about this idea of leading with your heart and your head, meaning we're talking about heart skills, but we also want to balance, right? We're going to balance emotional intelligence with strategic thinking. That this isn't an either or, but it's a balance. And what I often find is there's an over reliance by many leaders on the head skills. And when you ask employees today, and we can talk about some of the other research findings here too, these heart skills are even more critical than ever before.
I agree that these aren't soft skills. they are definitely the hardest of the essential skills that need to be learned. One of the things that we talk a lot about, at least because, I run a lot of strategy with my clients, I'm sure you do as well, is to ensure that the strategies that we have are exciting. And excitement comes from the heart, right?
Mhm.
So if this is a strategy and we don't have any excitement around it, the likelihood that you're going to get there in any accelerated pace is probably pretty low. So finding that excitement, that heart connection to the strategies that the teams are working on. I'm curious because I love the distinction that you're bringing up with AI and that it's a tool that will outplace leaders who don't use it. But AI also may win out for those who don't actually learn the heart-based skills. So can you paint a picture for me about what should they be using in AI, but also balancing with their heart?
Yeah, so I think AI is great for routine tasks. And I think we're going to see that happen, that more and more of the routine tasks AI is going to, take care of. And AI can be used for, so much more than that. But when it comes to sort of judgment around what AI is spitting out, when it comes to the strategic thinking and choice making and decision making that AI might be spitting out, AI may give you some options or some ways to innovate or some creative suggestions. We still need the human being to apply their own judgment as to what makes the most sense here, and also be skeptical of what AI is spitting out often because it can be slop and hallucinations. And we need the human to use this as a tool and an amplification of uh, help with some problem solving.
Yeah. In your book, you talk about armor and leaders with
Mhm.
it. Why is that the enemy of a high-performing small team? I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, so I think many of us as leaders were trained that professional means impersonal, or don't let people see you sweat, or any of that. But the real, like, leave your feelings at the door. And the reality is, I think leaders who put on armor, there's a cost to that. Armor's great for battle. I think when it comes to leadership, we need to take off our armor appropriately. And of course, there's an important balance here. So we all know someone who is sort of sharing too much information,
Yeah.
TMI. We don't want that. A leader who turns a meeting into a therapy session. That is not what we want here. On the other end of the spectrum, there are leaders who think authenticity and vulnerability is all about saying whatever they think or feel. That is not what we want either. We want a balance as leaders think about how can I share my truths in a way that others can hear them. And the benefit is it brings you closer to your employees, that you're role modeling some vulnerability that allows them to know they're safe. They can be vulnerable to share their idea, to disagree. It's just so important when it comes to psychological safety.
We kind of started the conversation talking about psychological safety and that people won't tell you something that they're not safe and feeling like they can
Yeah.
have. And I think that that is especially true in leaders that are results driven and not very human centric.
Hmm.
For our folks who finds they think that they are providing a safe environment, what would be some of the cues that they're not? And how can you kind of open up the opportunity to ask the questions so that you're not listening harder, but you're actually listening for what it is that your team wants? I know that that was kind of like a multi-pronged question. Did you
Yeah.
say what my question was?
Yeah, I think so. So
Good.
so I'm a leader. I think I'm creating psychological safety, but the reality is not.
Yeah.
That's not what my people are experiencing. I mean, I think it's helpful in so many situations like this to ask your folks to share. One of the things I'm trying to do is be as open I can in these meetings to make sure everyone has the opportunity to weigh in. Give me one thing I'm doing well, and give me one piece of advice that I could be doing better. And you might ask sort of everyone on your team those questions.
Okay.
I think the other thing is you can use some good questions as a litmus test during the meeting. So, for example, a great question I love to ask is, what am I missing? Right? Demonstrates vulnerability. It allows people to sort of share. The other thing I love when leaders ask is sort of toward the end of the conversation to be able to say something like, we've talked about a lot today. What truth have you thought in this meeting, but you haven't articulated that would be helpful to us to bring forward? And then use a leader, be quiet. And it's amazing, yes, what then happens, what truths come up, and that's often the best, most important part of the conversation. So the trick too, or the strategy is not to wait too long into a meeting to ask about people's truths, but it's a wonderful way to just check yourself as you go. Are there truths that folks haven't been sharing?
I'm going to try that one today at my team meeting. Um, I love the idea of speaking it as a truth because that's how they see it, right? It's their truth. It doesn't have,
Hmm.
um, and I'm curious if it'll be like, no, we're all good, or if that question over time will actually bring additional things. I'm excited to try that one. So thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
the
awesome. Let me
suggestion.
know how it goes.
Will, absolutely. I just want to tell you that I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I'm excited to actually dive into the book. I just got my copy, which I don't have in front of me, um, unfortunately. But if you have a copy,
I
I
do.
for you to show. Yeah, there we go. It's a beautiful, colorful book with lots of tips inside. Where can people
Yeah.
find your book? Where it's so beautiful.
Yeah, no thanks. It's and I show it and share it, but let me describe it for just
Yeah.
2 seconds here. It's designed for the busy leader. So you could read it front to back. You could jump into a chapter on one of the differentiators. You could jump into a couple pieces and parts. There are stories from exceptional leaders in here that are guiding the way that I hope are inspirational. So it is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold. If you want like more info on it, thegrossmangroup.co/books.
Okay, fantastic. Everything he just said will also be included in the notes, the show notes of this podcast. So you will be able to click on them from there. David, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you very much for bringing this work into the world.